Hi everybody, this is the first of two instructional videos on how to use the COVID Infection Risk Assessment Tool, or RAT for short. As you can see, we're here at the RAT website at 1040plus.com/RAT. This is your main interface in which you're going to enter your data. You're going to be manipulating that data with these variables. And this is your results section, which I'll be going over. As you can see, there are some helpful tool tips to explain the sections to you and some of the methodology. There's also other sections of the program. One important section is going to be the links section, which is links to where you find the data that we're going to be entering in the main interface. Two important points that I want to emphasize here in this first video are, number one, entering accurate and up-to-date data so we can have useful findings, come up with useful statistics. And then number two, I'll be explaining the methodology. Okay, let's get started by entering data, and we do that here in step one. As you can see, I'm in Summit County. We can also study state or national data. You'll have to do a little bit of homework to determine the population of your area. But we use cases, hospitalizations, which not all localities will provide. In one of my links below, you'll see a tip on how to estimate that. We use deaths, and more importantly, we're going to have to do a little bit of math to come up with the critical growth rate. And let me show you how we do that. Here is Ohio's website, and as you can see, it's got the cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. I'm not going to use this data for analysis. I'm going to use my individual county, but I do want to point something out here on Ohio's reports. You can see an aberration here in the number of cases, and at the time that was occurring, it would have been easy to think that we were going to have an explosion in cases. But as you can see, it's a gradual growth rate before that aberration and after that aberration. So what I tend to do is I tend to use the last 7 days, 7 to 10 days, to ascertain the growth rate. Here in Ohio, you had this number today, and 10 days ago, you were at this number. Let me show you how we determine that growth rate. We bring up our calculator. And we've got 16,769. And we're going to subtract 14,382. Take that over the 14,382. And since it's a 10-day period we're looking at, we divide that by the 10 days. And that's your average growth rate there, 1.65%. Now, since I'm studying Summit County, let's go over here to Summit County and get the numbers from there. Here's our cases, hospitalizations, deaths, and let's get our growth rate here. 542 minus 426. I've already done the math, and that takes into consideration this spurt right here. Summit County is 2.14%. So let's plug in this our new information, 542. And we're at about 2%. And you can see as I was changing the ever important growth rate, you look over here where these projections change. So that's why it's critical to have an accurate growth rate. Okay, now that we have accurate data in, we're going to discuss the methodology, the interpretation of the data, as well as how the data changes based on work-life variables. The axiom, or the premise on which the rat is based, is pretty simple math. Your interaction risk, that is, the chance of you getting infected, relies on the odds that you'll interact with an infected individual. Now, in this case, we know it's confirmed that there are 542 infected individuals in Summit County, a population of 542,000. So basically, without taking any chances, let's say you pitch a tent in the woods for 3 months or you hide in your bedroom closet, you've got about 1 out of 1,000 chance of interacting with an infected individual. Now, this is not the odds of you becoming infected. This is the odds of you interacting with an infected individual, and this is assuming an equal distribution of the infected individuals throughout your county. Now, there are lifestyle variables and risk factors that will increase your odds, and that is, quite logically, the more people that you interact with, the greater the likelihood or the greater the odds that you're going to interact with an infected individual. Now, I know one thing you're wondering is, but sir, these are the confirmed cases. The news, the media has been telling me that the number could be 10 times that. There may be 10 times that many people out there that are infected that we don't know of yet. I hear your argument, and I will respond to that this way. Once those individuals get sick, those will be manifested, those cases will be manifested here in the confirmed cases, and we will see a higher growth rate. We've been at this for how many weeks now? 6 weeks, 8 weeks? And you saw how smooth our growth rate is. So I think we've been into it long enough that that the growth is going to be fairly predictable from this point forward. Not that I'm comfortable with a 2% daily growth rate. That is still significant and something to keep an eye on. So here's an example of where this individual lives in the suburbs, works in the suburbs, works full-time, has these interactions. You can see the number of interactions here. If they're working, you can see in this column here how it has increased the baseline interaction risk. Right here, somebody who's working full-time that has 10 daily interactions is 4.3 times, has 4.3 times greater risk of interacting with someone who is infected. Still, that's less than 1%, okay? But before you get comfortable with this less than 1%, you think that's minuscule. Here's the problem. If everyone engaged in this behavior, if everyone worked full time and had this many interactions, and everyone took on this same risk, you multiply this now by the county population, and all of a sudden, look at what the projected cases would be in 30 days versus what they would be um, without this additional risk, given the current growth rate. And I can demonstrate that by manipulating these variables. Let me bring down this. This is what I call running hot. So let me bring this down by sending people home, the average worker home. Cut their hours in half. Consequently, cut their interactions in half. And you can see we've already dropped it below the normal straight line projection. We're running blue here. Consequently, these multipliers dropped. Now, this is someone who works in the suburbs. There are other factors here too. As you know, urban areas are more densely populated. Whether they live or work in the city, those folks that they interact with are likely to have had more interactions themselves, which increases our risk. And you can see we're running a little bit ahead of the straight line projections. So I'm sure you want to get started. I'm sure you want to get started entering in accurate data for your area, as well as seeing how your lifestyle variables affect not only your risk, but the risk of your community. Okay, thanks for watching. And before closing, I want to mention that there's an exciting new feature coming up in our next segment, in which I'll describe the heat index. The heat index essentially is a way for you to compare your target area with any other area of the country quickly and easily. Bye for now.